After Bangladesh, the Netherlands is the most densely populated country in the world. And with half of the country below sea level and constantly under threat from rising waters, building space is scarce. One solution is to build floating homes. In 1995, when the river Meuse flooded in the south of Holland, hundreds of thousands of people were forced to leave their homes. Anne van der Molen and her family were amongst those evacuated, and she embraces the opportunity to own a floating home. Dutch construction company Dura Vermeer has built 37 of these houses so far. Before being placed in position on the water, the houses are first constructed on land. And then placed atop concrete pontoons made from giant lumps of polystyrene reinforced with steel. They are said to be unsinkable. It's a concept that developers are planning to take even further. The cost of these floating homes is between $300,000 and $400,000 US. In the Chilean town of Villaseca, patrons enjoy homemade cooking from a kitchen that looks like a school science experiment. Using solar energy, restaurant owner Marta Rojas serves meals cooked in orange boxes placed outside her establishment, where their wide flaps with metallic sheets open to the sky. Reflecting light into the box's dark interiors, these solar stoves feed about 60 customers a day on weekends. Visitors, mostly foreign tourists on package tours, go to Rojas' restaurant to savour its specialties: fresh bread, a meat stew, and leche asada, or flan for dessert. Rojas says one of the benefits of the device is that it can work throughout the day. The position of the stove can be changed as the sun drifts across the sky, allowing the cook to work even when the sun has passed its most powerful point. Solar kitchens are a clever idea, but some locals don't like them. For those who can use them, there are benefits, though slow ones. It takes about 2 hours to bake bread and about 3 hours to cook stew, and that's in summer. Environmental scientist Mike Logan and 2 volunteers are preparing to test bacteria levels on Lake Rosso in Muskoka. Jane and Susan are not scientists, they're homeowners. They are 2 of 100 volunteers from the Muskoka Lakes Association who work hard to protect their lakes. Mike and his team are looking for hotspots to do their testing. Canadians say there are 5 million lakes worldwide and 3 million in Canada. There are certainly tens of thousands of lakes in this region. It also has some of the purest water in the world. That is partly because of the efforts of volunteers like Mike, Jane and Susan. Muskoka is exploding with hotels, tourists, boats, cars and new homeowners. Pollution can threaten the unique quality of these lakes. When Mike returns with his team to the Lake Association office, they place the water samples into vials and incubate them for 24 hours. Mike searches for phosphorus from detergents and fertilizers. He also measures turbidity, how clear the water is. The most potent bacteria is E. coli, which comes from human waste. E. coli is spotted with the fluorescence scanner. Most world authorities tolerate a level of 200 counts of E. coli per 100 mils of water. The standard in this community is just 10 counts of E. coli per 100 mils of water. That is just 5% of the world's standards. When it deviates above that level, the Lakes Association warns the authorities. Canadians want to keep their water the purest in the world. Britain used to be known as the dirty man of Europe. We have a reputation, they say, which is quite scurrilous and unjustified. Britain's rivers are at their cleanest since records began. Across the UK, 95% of rivers have been rated as good or fair, compared with 92% way back in 1990. And rivers in the industrialised North and Midlands have shown a dramatic improvement according to the latest figures. But it's Britain's love affair with the car which is proving the most difficult problem to solve. It's thought some 80,000 people will die from long-term exposure to road traffic pollution, asthma, heart and circulatory problems. American glaciologist Jason Box and Australian polar explorer John Holscher used depth survey equipment on a number of melt lakes in the Greenland ice sheet. They wanted to estimate the melt water volume in lakes over the entire ice sheet by comparing the depth of a melt lake and its shade of blue. The volume of meltwater is important because it plays a role in accelerating the movement of the ice sheet. This in turn affects sea level rise as the ice sheet flows towards the coast and delivers ice and meltwater to the sea. Dr. Box's NASA-funded research revealed that meltwater production has increased more than 30%. He says the lakes play an important role in melt-induced acceleration, recently discovered at a NASA research project on the glacier in the Uliasset Ice Fjord, one of the fastest continuously moving glaciers measured. The environmentalist group Greenpeace has called for urgent action by the industrialised countries to cut down on greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to global climate change. Scientists say if the whole of the Greenland ice sheet completely disappears, the sea level could rise up to 7 metres. This horror scenario seems a distant future away, but the continuous melting of the Greenland ice sheet could threaten the lives of a large percentage of global population that lives in coastal areas. The Natural History Museum's insect collection is vast. This sprawling storage room filled with thousands of cabinets is just one of 6 floors that have to be painstakingly packed away for movement to a new state-of-the-art research facility. The collection boasts a staggering 28 million insects, and every one has to be removed and packed away. Any changes in temperature, humidity or even light could destroy rare and delicate specimens. The insects are used by researchers from all over the world, investigating everything from new species to better ways of combating insects that spread diseases like malaria. Many of the insects and information stored in this collection are irreplaceable, like these beetles collected by Charles Darwin himself. Other insects in the collection, captured and classified hundreds of years ago, may even be extinct, and therefore the only example left in the world. While moving the collection will take months, preparations for the move have been underway for years, including the exhausting job of checking that every one of the 28 million insects was securely fastened to the correct label and display board. Those hazy days lying in the sun are what most of us consider the ideal holiday. But the very God that holidaymakers worship would be deadly without the protection of the ozone layer. Ozone in the upper atmosphere is formed by paired oxygen atoms splitting up and then reforming again in threes. This ozone layer absorbs the sun's harmful ultraviolet rays. But there is also bad ozone. That's why ozone is under surveillance. At the Netherlands Royal Institute of Meteorology, they monitor the state of the ozone layer, which is under attack from man-made chlorofluorocarbons. Because of high-altitude air currents, the South Pole is where ozone-destroying CFCs end up. This destruction varies from year to year, season to season. During the summer and spring, there is so little ozone, there is actually a hole in the ozone layer. The European satellite Envisat, which monitors the state of the planet, also carries an instrument to check up on the ozone layer. Scientists can pinpoint the quantity and source of most ozone and trace its course to the South Pole. This data sent back by Envisat shows the hole has swollen to an area of 10 million square kilometres, approximately the same size as Europe, and likely to expand. With CFCs used less and less in refrigerators and freezers, and as a propellant in aerosols, the whole of the ozone layer was seen to be stabilising. But this data suggests it may take decades to reverse the damage done by man-made chemicals. Engineers Peter Nortman and Greg Hansen are always looking for ways to do things better. Now they've found a way to double the mileage of the Toyota Prius, a gas-electric hybrid that already gets as much as 50 miles to the gallon. By installing plug-in batteries, they boosted the electric reserve, giving the car super high mileage, up to 100 miles per gallon. It cost $12,000 US, but the price would come down with commercial production. Alternative fuels are another option. Country singer Willie Nelson promoted biofuel on a tour. Basically, it's cooking oil, recycled to power diesel engines. Any diesel will run on it, and mass production could make it significantly cheaper. And then there are propane-powered cars. About 5% of the Los Angeles taxi fleet is propane. Fuel stations are harder to find, but it is cheaper. New technology is almost always more expensive in the early going, but these two electrical engineers believe rising gas prices and falling technology costs will put drivers in new kinds of cars and make a lot of sense in the years ahead. Fruits such as apples and pears are usually associated with English gardens, but as the climate gets warmer, a new range of crops can be found. Hotter summers and milder winters mean the Royal Horticultural Society at Wisley is now able to grow fruit usually found in the heat of southern Europe and Africa. Meteorologists say Britain's climate is getting warmer every year. As a result, apricots, figs and kiwi fruit, usually imported from South America and Africa, are being produced across southern Britain. Grapes are also being grown on a large scale, with vineyards now a common sight. These changes mean growers are using new cultivation techniques to exploit the milder conditions. As well as providing exotic fruit, the changes mean many old favourites can be grown nearly all year round. One thing's for sure, British gardeners now face some long, hot summers ahead. Britain's main battle tank, the Challenger 2, is a relatively new design. It entered service only a few years ago and has seen action in Bosnia, Kosovo and Iraq. Like many modern tanks, it's driven by a powerful diesel motor. It has wide metal tracks instead of wheels to provide traction in broken terrain. But the tank designs of the future may look very different. Long the low-pollution mainstay of Britain's milk delivery men, the electric vehicle may be about to make an entry onto the world's battlefields. An American company say they've created an electric tank that moves quicker than anything else over a battlefield and has the added advantage of being completely environmentally friendly. This is the General Dynamics AHED prototype, built around a diesel-electric hybrid motor. A hybrid electric motor can be far more efficient than those with mechanical drivetrains. The wheels are driven electrically from batteries charged by a central diesel engine. It was the British Army that developed the world's first tanks during World War I. Now it's looking at technologies to build a new class of medium-weight, air-portable armoured vehicles. The AHEDD can turn its own length and generates its own power. That it can charge without needing a recharge impressed British defence experts. With much of the Netherlands dedicated to market gardening and the intensive cultivation of flowers and vegetables, severe flooding affects the country and means millions of dollars in losses. As a way of tackling the problem, a Dutch construction firm has built the world's first experimental floating greenhouse. The state-of-the-art greenhouse is part of a pilot project which includes floating homes and roads which will protect the country against flooding. Fully computerized with sensors that tell the windows when to open and the shades to drop, the climate can be fully controlled. The water beneath the floating greenhouse is used to irrigate the plants and control the temperature inside. Engineers are also working on ways to make the greenhouse revolve on the water so that it follows the sun. The building company says thousands of commercial greenhouses could eventually be built on water. The Royal Geographical Society, founded in 1830, is an international centre sponsoring geographical research, education and scientific expeditions. Geographers from across the world are gathering at the Society's annual 3-day conference, whose theme highlights the wide-ranging nature of geographical research. Several papers at the conference focus on the aftermath of tsunamis that have devastated the Indian Ocean basin. Studies of islands in the area suggest human activity has a negative effect on the ability of the natural environment to recover from disasters such as this. The research findings offer some guidelines to countries affected by disasters like tsunamis as they try to rebuild towns and villages. Global climate change and the effect of rapid industrialization in countries such as China were two other major topics that figured in many research papers that were presented at this conference. This could be the new look of British housing. These are some of the ideas shortlisted under a state-sponsored scheme to boost the quantity of affordable housing in Britain. The challenge is to build houses for a maximum of £60,000 while meeting strict quality criteria. This competition aims to stimulate fresh thinking in housing design using efficient and environmentally friendly building methods. The shortlisted companies fleshed out their plans for low-cost homes to be built on 10 publicly owned sites around Britain. Just as in this recently completed housing complex south of London, environmental criteria had to be a central component of the winning designs. After the final winners are announced, construction will start soon after. Orangutans like these in Indonesia are under threat. On the island of Sumatra, loss of their forest habitat combined with the effects of tsunamis means that fewer than 250 of these creatures could be left in 50 years. This was the warning from the World Conservation Monitoring Centre, which compiled this first atlas of the great apes. The atlas is a comprehensive assessment of the 23 states hosting populations of wild great apes. And in many of these countries, the situation is precarious. At the launch of the Atlas at London Zoological Society, conservationists stressed that conservation and protection of the apes would go hand in hand with economic development. This atlas will be the centerpiece of many discussions of ways to better protect our nearest relatives in the animal kingdom.